In the Philippines, a retail company launches a loyalty program that tracks purchases and online behavior of its members. Under the Data Privacy Act of 2012, what is an essential step the company must take when processing personal data for this program? A. Automatically enroll customers in the program without requiring explicit consent. B. Obtain explicit consent from customers specifically for the tracking of their online behavior. C. Only track purchases made in-store to avoid consent requirements for online data collection. Provide detailed monthly reports to customers about their tracked data. Correct answer, B. Obtain explicit consent from customers specifically for the tracking of their online behavior. A Japanese company plans to implement facial recognition technology for security purposes in its offices. Under the Act on the Protection of Personal Information, API, which consideration is crucial for lawful implementation? A. The company must limit the use of technology to high-security areas only. B. Employees and visitors must be notified about the use of facial recognition technology. C. Consent is not required if the technology is deemed necessary for security reasons. D. The company must ensure that the data captured is stored outside of Japan. Correct answer, B. Employees and visitors must be notified about the use of facial recognition technology. An e-commerce platform based in Singapore intends to profile users for targeted advertising. According to the Personal Data Protection Act, PDPA, which action is necessary for compliance with data protection laws? A. Profiling must be limited to users who have made a purchase within the last year. B. Users must be informed about the profiling and given the option to opt out at any times. Targeted advertising is exempt from the PDPA, so no specific actions are necessary. User consent must be obtained annually to continue profiling activities. Correct answer? B. Users must be informed about the profiling and given the option to opt out at any time. A South Korean mobile app collects and exports user data to a US-based server for analysis. Under the Personal Information Protection Act, PIPA, what is a critical requirement for such international data transfers? A. The app must ensure that the US-based server has equivalent data protection measures to those in South Korea. B. User consent for data export must be obtained in a format that is legally binding in the USC. The transfer must be reported to and approved by the Korea Communications Commission, KCC, beforehand. D. An impact assessment report on the privacy implications of the data transfer must be made publicly available. Correct answer, A. The app must ensure that the US-based server has equivalent data protection measures to those in South Korea. In India, a fintech startup uses artificial intelligence, AI, to offer personalized financial advice to its users. Under the proposed Personal Data Protection Bill, what must the startup do to lawfully process sensitive personal data for AI training? A. Ensure that all data used for AI training is anonymized before processing. B. Obtain explicit consent from users for the use of their sensitive personal data in AI training. C. Limit the use of sensitive personal data to those users who have opted into the AI-based advice featured. Provide users with the ability to review and correct the AI-generated advice based on their data. Correct answer. B. Obtain explicit consent from users for the use of their sensitive personal data in AI training. A multinational company operating in Malaysia intends to monitor its employees' emails for data leak prevention. Under Malaysia's Personal Data Protection Act, PDPA, which step must the company take for lawful monitoring? A. The company must provide clear guidelines on email monitoring to employees upon employment. B. Employee consent is not required if the company deems the monitoring necessary for its interests. C. Monitoring must be limited to emails sent through the company's email system only. D. The company must notify employees each time an email is accessed for monitoring purposes. Correct answer, A. The company must provide clear guidelines on email monitoring to employees upon employment. An online marketplace in Thailand uses customer data to create lookalike audiences for advertising on social media platforms. Under Thailand's Personal Data Protection Act, PDPA, which requirement must be fulfilled for this practice to comply with the law? A. Customers must be informed about the creation of lookalike audiences and given the option to opt out. B. The company must obtain explicit consent from each customer before their data can be used for creating lookalike audiences. C. Lookalike audience creation is considered a legitimate interest. Therefore, customer consent is not required. The company must ensure that the social media platforms have data protection standards that meet or exceed those of the PDPA. Correct answer, B. The company must obtain explicit consent from each customer before their data can be used for creating lookalike audiences. A healthcare app in Singapore plans to use anonymized user data for public health research, according to the Personal Data Protection Act, PDPA. Which statement is true regarding the use of anonymized data? A. Anonymized data is not considered personal data under the PDPA, so no consent is required for its use. B. The app must still obtain consent from users before collecting data, even if it is to be anonymized. C. The app is required to inform the Personal Data Protection Commission, PDPC, about the use of anonymized data for research. D. Users must be provided with the option to opt out of their data being anonymized and used for research. Correct answer, A. Anonymized data is not considered personal data under the PDPA, so no consent is required for its use. Under the cybersecurity law of China, a multinational corporation operating within China uses a cloud service to store personal data of its customers. What is a key compliance requirement for the corporation? A. The corporation must store all personal data within China and cannot transfer it abroad without approval. B. Cloud services used must be certified by the Chinese government for cybersecurity compliance. C. Customer consent must be obtained for storing personal data on the cloud, regardless of the data's sensitivity. D. The corporation must conduct annual cybersecurity assessments and report them to the Cyberspace Administration of China, CAC. Correct answer, A. The corporation must store all personal data within China and cannot transfer it abroad without approval. A Japanese retail chain plans to introduce a customer recognition system using biometric data across its stores. Under Japan's Act on the Protection of Personal Information (API), what must the retail chain ensure before implementing this system? A. The system must only be used for security purposes and not for marketing or customer service enhancements. B. Customers must be informed about the purpose of the biometric data collection and must provide their explicit consent. C. Biometric data must be stored for a limited time only and deleted immediately after the purpose of collection is achieved. The retail chain must provide an alternative method for customer recognition that does not involve biometric data. Correct answer, B. Customers must be informed about the purpose of the biometric data collection and must provide their explicit consent.
In Hong Kong, a data processor plans to use automated decision-making processes to evaluate credit applications. According to the Personal Data Privacy Ordinance, PDPO, which requirement must the data processor meet? A. The data processor must ensure that the decision-making process is fully transparent to applicants. B. Applicants have the right to request a human review of decisions made by automated processes. C. Consent from applicants is not required if the automated decision-making process is stated in the terms and conditions. D. The data processor must disclose the logic involved in the decision-making process upon request. Correct answer, B. Applicants have the right to request a human review of decisions made by automated processes. A technology company in South Korea develops a new app that collects location data to provide personalized content and ads. Under the Personal Information Protection Act, PIPA, what must the company do to ensure compliance? Collect location data only when the app is actively in use and with user consent. B. Provide detailed information to users about how their location data will be used and shared. C. Ensure that users can access and delete their location data at any time. All of the above. Correct answer, D. All of the above. An Australian company processes personal data of individuals from various Asian countries for a global marketing campaign. Under the Australian Privacy Principles, APPs, what must the company ensure regarding the personal data of non-Australian individuals? A. The processing is directly related to an activity that has a substantial connection to Australia. B. The individuals have been informed that their data will not be protected by the APPC. Consent is obtained from each individual. specifying that their data may be used in a global campaign. D. The company complies with the privacy laws of each individual's country of residence in addition to the APPs. Correct answer? D. The company complies with the privacy laws of each individual's country of residence in addition to the APPs. In Taiwan, a social media company introduces a new feature that uses algorithms to suggest friends based on users' location history. According to Taiwan's Personal Data Protection Act, what is required for this feature to comply with the law? Users must be notified about the new feature and given the option to disable it. B. The company must obtain explicit consent from users before collecting and using location data for friend suggestions. C. Location data must be anonymized before being used to suggest friends to ensure user privacy. D. The company must provide an annual report to the National Communications Commission, NCC, detailing the use of location data. Correct answer, B. The company must obtain explicit consent from users before collecting and using location data for friend suggestions. A multinational corporation with offices in Malaysia and Singapore wishes to transfer employee data between its offices for internal administrative purposes. Under Singapore's PDPA and Malaysia's PDPA, what must the corporation ensure to lawfully transfer this data? A. Employee consent is obtained in both countries for the specific purpose of data transfer. B. The data protection laws of the country receiving the data provide a standard of protection comparable to that of the country sending the data. C. The corporation has a binding corporate rule, BCR, in place that has been approved by data protection authorities in both countries. D. The transfer is necessary for the performance of a contract between the employee and the corporation. Correct answer, B. The data protection laws of the country receiving the data provide a standard of protection comparable to that of the country sending the data. A Philippine BPO company processes EU citizen data on behalf of a European client. Under the Data Privacy Act of 2012 and in consideration of the GDPR, what is the most crucial step the BPO must take to ensure compliance with cross-jurisdictional data privacy requirements? A. Implement adequate data protection measures that meet the GDPR requirements, even if not required by Philippine law. B. Obtain explicit consent from EU citizens for the transfer of their data to the Philippines. C. Ensure that the European client has a valid legal basis for transferring data to the BPOD. Register with the National Privacy Commission, NPC, as a processor of foreign data. Correct answer, A. Implement adequate data protection measures that meet the GDPR requirements, even if not required by Philippine law. An e-commerce company in Indonesia uses third-party cookies to track user behavior across websites for targeted advertising. Considering the ASEAN Framework on Personal Data Protection, what must the company ensure to lawfully use third-party cookies for tracking? A. Users are informed about the use of cookies and their purpose upon first visit to the website. Obtain explicit consent from users before any cookies are placed on their devices. Provide a cookie management tool that allows users to opt out of non-essential cookies. D. All of the above. Correct answer, D. All of the above. In South Korea, a fintech app provides users with financial advice based on their spending habits. Under the Personal Information Protection Act, CIPP, what specific action must the app take regarding sensitive personal information such as financial data? A. Encrypt sensitive personal information both in transit and at rest. B. Obtain explicit consent from users specifically for the collection and analysis of financial data. Limit the collection of sensitive personal information to what is strictly necessary for providing financial advice, and conduct a privacy impact assessment, PIA, specifically for the processing of sensitive personal information. Correct answer, B. Obtain explicit consent from users specifically for the collection and analysis of financial data. A multinational corporation transfers employee personal data from its Vietnamese subsidiary to its headquarters in Singapore for HR analytics. Under Vietnam's law on cybersecurity and Singapore's Personal Data Protection Act, PDPA, what is a prerequisite for this cross-border data transfer? A. The corporation must ensure that the data transfer is in compliance with the cybersecurity laws of Vietnam. B. Employee consent must be obtained in both Vietnam and Singapore before the transfer. C. The Singapore headquarters must provide a data protection guarantee that is at least equivalent to the protection offered under Vietnamese Law D. A data processing agreement, DPA, must be in place, specifying the purposes of data transfer and the measures taken to protect the data. Correct answer, C. The Singapore headquarters must provide a data protection guarantee that is at least equivalent to the protection offered under Vietnamese law. An Australian tech company uses a cloud service provider in India to store and process data collected from its operations across Asia. Given the diversity of data protection laws in Asia and the Australian privacy principles, APPs, what must the company ensure to maintain compliance when choosing an overseas cloud service provider? A. The cloud service provider has a public commitment to uphold data protection principles equivalent to the APPSB. Data subjects are informed about the overseas transfer and given the option to opt out. C. The company conducts regular audits of the cloud service provider to ensure compliance with the APPSD. The cloud service provider's data protection measures are assessed and deemed adequate by the Office of the Australian Information Commissioner, OAIC. Correct answer, A. The cloud service provider has a public commitment to uphold data protection principles equivalent to the APPs.
What principle is emphasized by the Personal Information Protection Act, PIPA, of South Korea in relation to data minimization? A. Collecting as much data as possible for future use. B. Limiting the collection of personal information to what is directly relevant and necessary to accomplish a specified purpose. C. Encouraging the storage of data indefinitely for potential analysis. D. Prioritizing the use of personal information for marketing purposes. Correct answer, B. Limiting the collection of personal information to what is directly relevant and necessary to accomplish a specified purpose. In the context of the General Data Protection Regulation, GDPR, and its application to Asian companies, what requirement must be met for data transfer outside the EU? A. The receiving country must be on the EU's list of countries with adequate data protection. B. Personal data can only be transferred to countries that have signed a bilateral data protection agreement with the EU. C. Data subjects must reside in the EU for their data to be protected under GDPR. D. All Asian countries are considered to have adequate data protection by default. Correct answer, A. The receiving country must be on the EU's list of countries with adequate data protection. Considering the ASEAN framework on personal data protection, which of the following is not a recognized principle? A. Consent. B. Notice and choice. C. Transborder data flow. D. Mandatory data localization. Correct answer, D. Mandatory data localization. A Japanese company with operations in the EU is subject to both the GDPR and the Act on the Protection of Personal Information, APPI. When transferring employee data from its EU offices to Japan, what must the company ensure to comply with both jurisdictions? The data subjects have provided their consent in writing. B. The transfer is necessary for the performance of a contract between the data subject and the controller. C. Japan is recognized by the EU as providing an adequate level of data protection. D. The company has implemented binding corporate rules, BCRs, approved by the EU. Correct answer, C. Japan is recognized by the EU as providing an adequate level of data protection. In China's Personal Information Protection Law, PAPL, what condition must be met for the processing of sensitive personal information? Sensitive personal information can be processed the same as any other personal information. B. Explicit consent must be obtained from the data subject. C. The data subject must be notified, but consent is not required. Processing is only allowed if it directly benefits national security. Correct answer, B. Explicit consent must be obtained from the data subject. An Indian IT services company processes EU citizen data as a data processor. Under the GDPR, what is a direct responsibility of the data processor? A. Obtaining consent from data subjects. B. Determining the purposes and means of processing personal data. Keeping records of processing activities. D. Conducting data protection impact assessments, DPIAs. Correct answer, C. Keeping records of processing activities. Under Singapore's Personal Data Protection Act, PDPA, when can an organization collect, use, or disclose personal data without the individual's consent? A. For any business purpose deemed necessary by the organization. B. when it is in the national interest. C. If the personal data is publicly available. D. When it benefits the organization financially. Correct answer. C. If the personal data is publicly available. A multinational corporation is transferring personal data from ASEAN countries to the US for processing. Under what circumstances is this permissible according to the ASEAN Framework on Digital Data Governance? A. The data subject has been informed and has not objected within 30 days. B. There are adequate safeguards in place, such as standard contractual clauses or binding corporate rules. C. The transfer is necessary for the performance of a contract to which the data subject is a party. D. The US has been deemed to provide an adequate level of protection by each ASEAN country. Correct answer. B. There are adequate safeguards in place, such as standard contractual clauses or binding corporate rules. For a technology company in India implementing a new HR system that includes AI for performance tracking, what is essential to comply with India's Personal Data Protection Bill? Proposed. A. Conducting a social impact assessment. B. Obtaining explicit consent from employees for data processing. C. Ensuring the AI system is transparent and explainable. D. Allowing employees to opt out of AI-based decisions. Correct answer. B. Obtaining explicit consent from employees for data processing. In the context of the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation, APEC Cross-Border Privacy Rules, CBPR system, what is a requirement for participating organizations? To localize data storage within APEC member economies. B. To ensure that data transfers are limited to countries within the APEC region. C. To adhere to the accountability principle, demonstrating compliance with applicable privacy policies. D. To obtain annual certification from APEC-approved auditors. Correct answer. C. To adhere to the accountability principle, demonstrating compliance with applicable privacy policies.
In the context of Singapore's Personal Data Protection Act, PDPA, which of the following activities is likely to be considered a breach of the consent obligation? A. Collecting personal data directly from the individual for a stated purpose. B. Using personal data for a purpose for which consent has been obtained. C. Disclosing personal data to a third party for a purpose unrelated to the one for which consent was originally given. D. Destroying personal data that is no longer necessary for business purposes. Correct answer. C. Disclosing personal data to a third party for a purpose unrelated to the one for which consent was originally given. Under Japan's Act on the Protection of Personal Information, APPI, when can a business handle personal information without the individual's consent? A. For improving user experience on their website. B. For direct marketing purposes by affiliated companies. C. When it is necessary for the protection of human life, health, or property, and it is difficult to obtain the individual's consent. D. For transferring data to a third country with adequate data protection measures. Correct answer. C. When it is necessary for the protection of human life, health, or property, and it is difficult to obtain the individual's consent. Which principle under China's Personal Information Protection Law, PIPL, requires data processors to minimize the duration of personal data retention? A. Principle of minimalization. B. Principle of specificity. C. Principle of transparency. D. Principle of limited retention. Correct answer. D. Principle of limited retention. Under Malaysia's Personal Data Protection Act, PDPA, what must the corporation ensure to comply with cross-border data transfer requirements? A. The data subject has given explicit consent to the transfer. B. The receiving country has similar or high standards of data protection. C. The transfer is necessary for the performance of a contract between the data subject and the corporation. D. All of the above. Correct answer. D. All of the above. Regarding South Korea's Personal Information Protection Act, PIPA, what is a unique requirement for processing sensitive personal information? A. Obtaining explicit consent from the data subject. B. Conducting a privacy impact assessment, PIA, before processing. C. Limiting the use to the specific purposes for which it was collected. D. Storing the data in a secured environment separate from other personal data. Correct answer. A. Obtaining explicit consent from the data subject. In the context of the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation, APEC, Cross-Border Privacy Rules, CBPR, system, what is the primary purpose of a privacy policy statement? A. To detail the technical security measures implemented by the organization. B. To provide a comprehensive list of personal data collected by the organization. C. To describe how personal data is collected, used, and shared by the organization. D. To list all countries to which the organization may transfer personal data. Correct answer. C. To describe how personal data is collected, used, and shared by the organization. A technology company in Hong Kong uses biometric data for employee access control. Under the Personal Data Privacy Ordinance, PDPO, what is a crucial requirement for processing biometric data? A. Conducting regular security audits to ensure data safety. B. Obtaining written consent from employees before collecting their biometric data. C. Providing an alternative access control method that does not require biometric data. D. All of the above. Correct answer. D. All of the above. In the event of a data breach involving personal information, which of the following actions is not required under the Philippines Data Privacy Act, DPA? A. Notifying the National Privacy Commission immediately. B. Informing affected individuals within 72 hours. C. Publishing a notice of the breach on the organization's website. D. Obtaining consent from affected individuals before announcing the breach. Correct answer. D. Obtaining consent from affected individuals before announcing the breach. When transferring personal data from Thailand to a third country under Thailand's Personal Data Protection Act, PDPA, which of the following is not a valid mechanism to ensure adequate protection of the transferred data? A. Ensuring the receiving country has an adequate level of personal data protection. B. Using standard contractual clauses approved by the Personal Data Protection Committee. C. Obtaining explicit consent from the data subject for specific transfer. D. Verifying the receiving organization's participation in an international data protection agreement. Correct answer. D. Verifying the receiving organization's participation in an international data protection agreement. A multinational corporation with operations in Japan is considering implementing a system that monitors employee emails to prevent data breaches. According to Japan's Act on the Protection of Personal Information, APPI, which of the following steps is essential before implementing such a monitoring system? A. Notifying the Personal Information Protection Commission, PPC, about the monitoring system. B. Obtaining employee consent after explaining the purpose and scope of monitoring. C. Implementing the system without employee consent as long as it's for legitimate business interests. D. Only monitoring emails that are marked as business-related by employees. Correct answer. B. Obtaining employee consent after explaining the purpose and scope of monitoring. In China, a health app collects personal health information and intends to use it for research purposes. According to the Personal Information Protection Law, people, what must the app do to comply with the law? A. Anonymize the personal information before using it for research. B. Obtain separate consent for the use of personal information in research. C. Ensure the research is conducted within China. D. Provide opt-out options for users at any time during the research. Correct answer. B. Obtain separate consent for the use of personal information in research. A South Korean online gaming company plans to expand its services to minors. Under the Personal Information Protection Act, PIPA, which of the following measures must the company take to lawfully process the personal information of minors? A. Verify the age of users and obtain consent from a legal guardian for users under 14. B. Limit the collection of personal information to name and age for all minor users. Automatically anonymize the personal information of minors before processing. D. Ensure parental control features are available for all accounts held by minors. Correct answer. A. Verify the age of users and obtain consent from a legal guardian for users under 14. An Australian financial institution intends to transfer customer personal data to a data processing facility located in India. Under the Australian privacy principles, APPS, which of the following is a prerequisite for this cross-border transfer of personal data? A. The institution must conduct a privacy impact assessment, PIA, specifically for the transfer. B. The data processing facility in India must adhere to the APPS or provide a comparable level of protection. C. Customers must be informed about the transfer, but consent is not required. D. The Australian Information Commissioner must approve the transfer. Correct answer. B. The data processing facility in India must adhere to the APPS or provide a comparable level of protection. An Indian IT services company plans to use automated decision-making processes, including profiling, to assess employee performance. Under India's Personal Data Protection Bill, what must the company ensure for compliance? A. Employees have the right to opt out of the automated decision-making process. B. The algorithm used for decision-making is publicly available. C. Human intervention is possible, and employees can request a review of automated decisions. D. Consent for automated decision-making is included in the employment contract. Correct answer. C. Human intervention is possible, and employees can request a review of automated decisions. A Hong Kong-based NGO intends to collect personal data for a public health survey. Under the Personal Data Privacy Ordinance, PDPO, which step is not necessary for compliance? A. Conducting a privacy impact assessment, PIA, before the survey. B. Providing a privacy notice at the point of data collection. C. Obtaining explicit consent for each specific use of the data collected. D. Ensuring data is not transferred outside of Hong Kong without consent. Correct answer. A. Conducting a privacy impact assessment, PIA, before the survey.